This week on the Walk On podcast.
I felt like I was just taking their time, their energy, their resources. But now it's like, okay, now I get to use their energy that they gave me and pay it forward to these, earlier in their career colleagues that I have. It's just like, again, it's a team thing. Like, we all need each other. We've learned this over especially the last 4 years. Like, we need each other. There's nothing in life without the collective. So it's just fun to get to cheer people on.
I can't believe you didn't notice. Well, welcome everybody to the Walk On podcast. This is season 2, the first episode. For those of you that are new, the podcast comes from a pursuit of talking to people that are living passionate lives, leading from that place of purpose. And we're going to have conversations with those folks that are living aligned life, fulfilling existences. But it really started with my journey. A couple of years ago, I kind of was in a rut coming out of COVID professionally, trying to figure out what's next for me. And so started looking into purpose and passion and how you do that in the workplace and your personal life. And so I'm on my journey. I'll share more about that. I've actually entered some advanced learning at Brown University as I'm repping a pullover. We'll share more about that in the coming episodes as that's going to change my professional direction a little bit, adding some new tools to the toolbox. But we're not here to talk about me. We're going to talk to our guest, Erin Barbeau, in a minute. But the point about Walk On and where we got that. Walk On, the title of the podcast, comes from the song You'll Never Walk Alone. If you haven't heard it, it's a moving song that encourages its listeners to hold your head up high. Don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a light. And so keep on with your journey, keep on doing the work. And I've used that throughout my whole life. Just kind of put your head down, keep doing the work, and you'll end up in good places. So that's the Walk On podcast. That's why we're here. And I want to kick it off talking about our guest, Erin Barbeau. Erin, welcome.
I'm so happy to be here, Michael. I feel like I should be wearing a Liverpool scarf right now, but next time I'll wear that.
Next time for sure. And Erin is the Senior Director for Sales Performance at FIS, and she's been changing a lot. So that role may have changed. She'll correct us. But she started her career in marketing with ESPN, moved on to Harley-Davidson, where she worked in corporate communications. And she's now at FIS, where she's grown rapidly and is currently driving sales performance. She has an MBA from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater in strategy and business leadership. She's received several awards, including the 2024 Women's Bond Club Rising Star Award, the 2023 Electronic Transaction Association Young Payments Professional, 40 Under 40 for that organization, the 2021 Paytech Women Emerging Trendsetter Award. Essentially, we are talking to a badass human being who's doing great things in the industry. And the last point, we met my client, the American Transaction Processors Coalition, works with driving public policy for the payments processing industry. FIS is a member, and Erin was one of our future leaders. It's a program we do every year to help the next generation of leaders in the industry. So Erin, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I truly am honored that you're here. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, first of all, it's fun to be here, Michael, because it's been a journey since we first met, I think. The ATPC class of 2020 was the inaugural class, and that was the one I was in. So we actually started that program in person and had to end it virtually, which is crazy. But as you said, I'm Erin Barbeau. For any of the Green Bay Packer fans out there, it's like Lambeau Field, but bar instead of lamb. I always have to explain that's how you spell my name, but I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Obviously, that's why I am a Green Bay Packer fan, but I've had a really cool career and have had a lot of life moments that have changed and shaped my passion and my purpose that have, in personal life and in professional life. So it's definitely been a journey, but it's really fun to be here, Michael. So thank you again for having me.
We're thrilled. So Erin, let's jump in on that journey a little bit. Talk about your career arc and how you got started and from Corp Comm to performance and where you are today.
Sure. So I went to the University of Wisconsin. So I'm a Badger for my undergrad, and I studied to be a sports broadcaster. So clearly you're getting the theme. I like soccer with Liverpool. I like the Packers. I like it all, but I really wanted to be Erin Andrews, like sideline reporter, call in football, American football games. That was totally my dream. Obviously, I'm not doing that today, but I've had some flavors of similar things. So I interned at FIS, which is my current company. And Michael, of FIS in college because it was a local company with a big office in Milwaukee. And I got lucky and got a position there within a communications type role. I worked there for 2 summers at FIS. And then my first big girl job, I call it, was at ESPN Madison. So that's a local radio station in Madison, Wisconsin, owned by Good Karma Brands, which is like an exploding company within the Milwaukee area and a lot of other areas. But so I worked there. I supported marketing. So did a lot of what we call street teaming, which is where you go to local high school basketball, football games and just activate. So we did a lot of partnership with like companies like Gatorade and things like that, just to make sure we were making a big splash within our partners. And then realized that I wanted to move back to Milwaukee and wanted to figure out how I could go back home because I was born and raised in Milwaukee and my family's here. So I wanted to be a little bit closer to home. So I actually contacted my boss when I was an intern and came back to FIS full time working in corporate risk, you guys, corporate risk. Michael, you know me pretty well. Like my personality is not corporate risk. It's more, it's a little bit different than that, but it was amazing. I learned a ton, but I didn't feel like it was the right fit for me. So I actually took a position at Harley Davidson, which everyone knows this iconic brand, especially in Milwaukee. Like that's the brand you want to work for.
Yeah.
You've made it
Yeah.
if you
The
get to work for
hometown team.
Harley. So cool. And I was actually there for the 115th anniversary. So I supported the planning of that event. So it's like a huge citywide party, motorcycles everywhere. That was amazing. I was there for about 2 years. Again, wonderful opportunity. And then, sometimes you just know where your home is. And FIS really felt like home to me. So I actually got a position offered to me when I was still at Harley. Like, hey, just take a chance. Like, consider coming back to FIS. And I returned to FIS in 2019 and haven't looked back for the last 5 years. Have gotten some amazing opportunities to grow my career and kind of grow up in the FIS organization. So that's a little bit about my winding road of a journey.
I love it. And I did not realize we shared that sports broadcasting passion. When I was a kid, I was either going to be a hockey player, a landscape architect, or go to the Newhouse School at Syracuse and do sports broadcasting.
Landscape architect. That's
It's just random. I love doing yard work, but
we
I literally
create our own Pat McAfee show. Like,
let's do it.
I think we should. We'll get on.
Let's do it. I, as a kid, I don't know if this is where you were, as a little kid, now I'm older, so you don't remember tape cassettes, but I had a little tape player and I would like play basketball in the yard and I would have that on recording and I would do play by play while I was playing basketball by myself.
That's awesome. Were you a lifelong athlete, Michael?
Yeah. Played college hockey and actually lived in
right.
Madison, outside Madison, Wisconsin for a little bit.
I think that like fuels it though. I was a lifelong athlete as well. And so I geek out over stuff like the Olympics because it's so fun.
Yeah.
But I think that was how you could continue your passion if you were going to play at a professional level is by going into sports. And now I'm just a fan. I'm a big fan.
Now, we'll get to the career side, but you mentioned a passion in sports. Are you playing sports at all now?
I do. Well, if you want to call it sports, we have a team that plays sand volleyball pretty much year round. So that's my sport more than anything.
That's good.
But
good. It's, it's
glory.
I don't know if you find this. I find, and I play old man beer league hockey, but I find that there's nothing that replaces getting on a tennis court is my other thing, or a hockey rink for an hour and a half, 2 hours, not thinking about the world, being competitive. There's just nothing to me like that.
I agree. I'm like one of those girls who's picking up golf. So my dad has golfed forever. And when I was in college, this is funny, I took a golf 101 class in college because I was like, oh, I'm a business major. Deals get done on the golf course, I thought. So I took a golf class and then didn't touch a club for like 5 years. And then asked my dad a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago, to start teaching me. I took lessons. And so that's like another passion of mine is figuring out how the hell to swing a golf club. It's a challenge, but that's, Michael, to your point, like you forget everything when you're walking 18 holes because my dad's traditional and doesn't drive a car. Like you're walking 18 holes, but you forget everything. Like it's just, you're focused on playing the game and having a good time. So, So, let's pivot that passion back to the workplace, because honestly, I just really, truly am impressed. You are someone, you can
have all the talent in the world, you can have all the opportunity in the world, but it's what you do with it, and hard work is the part of that, and you are someone who gives 1000%. So I'm not surprised you're taking golf lessons. I'm not surprised, that you're walking the course. But talk a little bit about your passion in the workplace and your current role. You know, how do you go from comms to really, I think where I'm watching you excel is in this operations
Sure.
strategic side. So talk a little bit more about that role and where you find the passion and joy.
I mean, I hate and love to keep bringing up sports, but I think, being an athlete, growing up instilled a lot of principles in my life that I take with me to the workplace. So, being coachable, being able to work in a team to get stuff done, having a little bit of fun, wanting to win,
Yep.
like all are very much core principles to who I am. Um, but I think when I started my career, I was really excited about like the sexy stuff, like the marketing and the communications. And very transparently, I got branded my goal as this is the girl who can make really pretty PowerPoints. This is the girl who's like the fun, bubbly person on the team. And I had a lot of conversations with my mentors over the last probably 5 years saying, like, I want to be a leader. I want to be seen as someone who's like moving and shaking shit up and a total badass at work, like making her mark on the industry. So yeah, so I got a lot of advice from mentors. And one of the best pieces of advice I got was I challenge you to every 18 to 24 months, totally changed the course of your role at FIS. So I went from a support role to a chief of staff role to a transformation role to a strategy role. And now I'm in a sales support type of role. So I think that alone has been really fascinating to just stretch and grow and rebrand myself as not just the make things pretty girl, the touchy feely girl, like truly show my muscle that I can have an impact. But like I struggled with that quite a bit. Like being branded, how do you reinvent yourself but keep the personality and keep your personality shining through? It's a balance for
Yeah.
sure.
How has that played out then in terms of how people you think they perceive you in the workplace now?
I'm fortunate to work with, I mean, Michael, you know, a lot of FIS people. I work with some of the best people in the world, like super supportive, super willing to help you and coach you through a new role. But I think I'm seeing success because the role I'm in right now, I am told every single day by my manager, who is one of the most incredible, influential people in my life, you're not that girl anymore. Like you did it and you're great at it. And if we really need you to like pull that tool out of your toolbox, we can. But you are a valued asset at this organization. We need you to be focusing here with more strategy, operationalization, the bigger ticket items. Then not saying PowerPoint and marketing is not important because it's super critical, but having a leader who empowers you to shift to another area of the organization and focus your time in an area where you feel you're making the biggest impact is really special.
So I want to dig in on that as for a second, if I can. So you mentioned executive coaching. That's actually, as you know,
Yeah.
that's the program I'm going back. I'm adding the executive leadership and performance coaching certificate to my toolbox. And I was astonished, not surprised, I guess, if I reflect on it, but astonished that there's a data point in one of the surveys that says like less than 10% of American employees feel that they're even periodically praised for their work.
Interesting.
What does that do for you when you have a boss who really is invested in your outcome?
Well, firstly, the executive coach, I'm so happy you're doing that because I attribute a lot of my growth over the last 2 years to my executive coach. And we just finished we have like 6 month sessions at FIS that supports. I had a damn near meltdown. I was like, what do I do without you? Because I would just talk to her weekly and, pick her
Yeah.
brain because having a third party was so exciting. But what I've learned, Michael, over the last, I'm going to say 5 years of working at FIS, this is true for my whole career, but I grew up, like I got smarter. I got a little bit wiser over the last 5 years. It's so important who you work for. Like we
Mhm.
say in FS all the time, people leave people, people don't leave companies. So that's a lot
Mhm.
of pressure on managers, to keep your
Yep.
people happy. But I've been super fortunate. Probably over the last 5 years, I've had three of the best bosses I've ever had in my career. I've also had some bosses that I really struggled with, but the best bosses I've had are ones that were mentors first and then kind of transitioned into being my manager because the relationship that you're able to build and the honesty, the trust, the empowerment that you get by having a mentorship relationship before them becoming your manager, I think has been really positive for me.
Yeah. So I wanna stay on that theme, but go in a different direction,
Yeah.
particularly in women in technology. As I work with young professionals, a lot of people wait. They wait for their turn. They wait to be invited into something. And I love your willingness to just dive in. And it's not dive in and put me on a spotlight. It's dive in and help. I want to help pull off a program. I want to help mentor. So talk to me a little bit about and talk to the audience about women in technology,
Yeah.
what it is and why it's important to you, what it's meant to you.
Yeah, I'm a helper. That's just I like feeling like I'm helping the greater good and something obviously, my career, Michael, working at Harley, working at ESPN, working in those fields, working in finance now. You don't see a ton of women with a seat at the table. And it wasn't until my second time at FIS where I started working in an organization where I was seeing VPs and SVPs be females. And that to me was a sign like, oh, seeing someone who maybe looks a little bit more like me in that role means that I could be in that role one day. So that was like the match being lit on my
That
passion.
representation.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Like for wanting to get involved with mostly women's organizations. Like I'm passionate about a lot of things, but if I had to pick my one thing, like I love women's organizations. So you alluded to this. I'm part of Paytech Women, which is a fintech and payments nonprofit organization. FIS is a big sponsor of it, but it's, industry wide in the United States. And essentially it's a organization that puts on events for networking, professional development, personal development. There's mentor programs. There's so much you can do there. And I lead our annual leadership summit, which is about 700 people for 2 days in Atlanta. Just the most special event, Michael. We need to get you there one time. But I've spent so much of my early career being mentored, and I hate to use this term, but like I had a lot of work moms who were my mother's age, taking me under their wing to support me. And now I feel, and I was telling my mom this the other day, talk to my mom. My mom knows everything about my life. Love. Shout out to my mother. but
Shout out.
like I was talking to her, I'm like, this is such a weird role that I'm in right now because I'm flipping it. I've been a mentee my entire life and now
Mhm.
I'm being a mentor. And I had
Right.
that moment where I was like, holy shit, like, I don't know if I'm qualified to be giving advice, but talking to you, Michael, and talking about, kind of the journey I've been on, you learn a lot in 10 years
Yeah.
of a career,
Yeah.
being in the professional world. So that's,
Yeah.
again, my favorite thing. And you alluded to this as well, like that ability to give back finally. Because I've been
Yeah.
taking so much over the last, course of my career. It's really cool to flip it and be able to give back now.
Well, I wanna pull on that thread, but just as a quick aside, I used to do, run public affairs across the Southeast for Walmart, and one of the things we did was prepared various people in the company to speak to media, and I would talk to store managers all the time and say, "Alright, there's a TV crew coming, and we need you to, be on camera," and they'd be
Yeah.
like, "I can't do that. Maybe I didn't go to college, or I didn't," and I would always push back to, "Do you run a $20 million operation? Do you have 400 employees? Do you, deal with HR issues?" That experience
Wow.
makes you an expert. Whether it's been 6 months or 10 years, you are an expert. So leaning into that is really powerful. And I love that you're coming into that sense. You also use the phrase,
Can I
I've been,
pause though? But I think some
yeah,
of that, Michael, is like they needed someone like you to give them the confidence that they could. Because I
yeah.
think having a champion like you in that situation has been the reason I've been able to grow confidence, like having that support.
Yeah. And I just think so often people didn't talk to them in that regard. They
Sure.
didn't try to put them in that position. So yeah, I think champions are absolutely important, and it sounds like you've had that. But you use the phrase you were taking for so long, and now you get to give back, and I find that really fascinating because people were investing in you, right? They weren't just you weren't taking, they weren't giving, but that is a selflessness to you that I really appreciate. So what is that like now, wearing that you've gone from that transition to taker to giver
Mhm.
in your parlance, how does that play out? What does that feel like?
It's the coolest thing. I feel so lucky. I coached volleyball in my career and I just love the opportunity of watching someone grow and develop. So I have a lot of mentees in my life. I probably have three of them who are within the 22 to 24-year-old range. Like this might be their first job at FIS. And I see like so much of myself in them. Like they're really eager, but they don't quite know where they want to go or
Yeah.
what they want to be or who they want to be when they grow up. I don't think any of us really know what we want to be when we grow up, but that's a whole nother conversation. But like I've spent, I used to put, hey, Michael, will you be my mentor? Would love to connect with you every month for 30 minutes. And that's the taking. Like I felt like I was
Yes.
just taking their time, their energy, their resources. But now it's like, okay, and now I get to use their energy that they gave me and pay it forward
Yeah.
to these, earlier in their career colleagues that I have. And watching my mentees like figure things out, put things together, have the challenging conversations with their managers that they want to have. It's just like, again, it's a team thing. Like you just want to
Yeah.
high five them and be like, hell yeah. Like I'm so proud of you. Like way to be
Yeah.
successful because we all need each other. We've learned this over especially the last 4 years. Like
Yeah.
we need each other. There's nothing in life without the collective. So it's just fun to get to cheer people on. And I joke a lot that I'm like the biggest FIS cheerleader in the world. Bruce Slothers once said this, that he bleeds green. And I agree with that. Like I bleed green, but I think it's just fun to be able to cheer people on. Like I will forever be cheering people on and wanting them to be
Yeah.
super, super wildly successful.
So, just a practical piece there, you had talked about, which is really great, as you reach out to your mentor saying, here's what I need from you. I need 30 minutes. I want to talk. How are you instilling that process, or what does that process look like for this next generation of mentees and you as the next generation of mentor? Is
Well,
that different than it was, or?
I don't know. I think it's the biggest thing that's different is, this is going to sound cliche, but having to build relationships on the camera instead of in person. But I think it will never go out of style telling someone, hey, I like your style. I respect your leadership. I want to be you one day. Will you give me advice every month? Because that's how I approached it. And that's how
Yeah.
for better or for worse, for right, for wrong, that's how I coach my mentees is there's no greater compliment than saying, I really respect who you are as a person and I want to learn from you. And so that's the advice I give them when they're asking someone to be their mentor, or they're asking someone to talk about career opportunities in their org. Just like we're all humans at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I probably say that 2 times a day. Like we are all humans figuring out life together, trying to do a little bit of good in the world. Don't
Yeah.
let, don't forget that just because we're in corporate America, like
Yeah.
we're all humans.
Yeah, I mean, I could bore you with all that's amazing. I could bore you with all kinds of new data about workplaces, but that is the key, right? The really successful corporations realize that it's their people and not the product,
Yeah.
not their customer. It's investing in people, and so I think it's great and powerful that you're helping people understand that it's people helping people.
Our head of sales, who is wonderful, I've learned so much from him, and I've only been in the sales world for 3 months. I knew him before that, but funny enough, we did an interview with him the other day, and he talked about like our clients, yes, are critical, but our employees are serving our clients. So you have to start with our colleagues, make sure they feel empowered, they have what they need, they're happy, and the rest will follow. We'll be able to service our clients, our shareholders will be happy, our consumers will be happy. Like it's this trickle effect that starts with the human element of employees. And if I could wear a t-shirt that said something like that every day, I would, because I think it's so easy to forget that. It's so
Yeah.
easy to forget the human element. It's so
Right.
critical.
And that's the gap to success. Is it's one thing to talk about, it's another thing to live it, and
Totally.
that's why it's really powerful to have people like you that are picking up that baton and going around the track. See, I'll bring in the Olympics
There
there
we
that you
go.
referenced,
Getting the
but
gold medal.
yeah, winning the gold medal, right? So you're in it for nothing else. I get it, which is fantastic. So let's talk a little bit, and I appreciate your time so much, and I want to be respectful of that. Talk a little bit about, if you would, we've talked about sports, but how do
Yeah.
you stoke your passions? How do you stay sharp and, so that you're valuable to your team and your company,
Sure.
but how do you stay fresh?
So had what we'll call life things happen during COVID. Thought my life was going to go left and it went right. For better, for worse, it just happened. And I think that 1000% changed how I do things. So in the past, I felt like I was going through the motions, doing things because it was, you know, the right way to do things.
Mhm.
What do you call it? Everyone's telling you to do something a certain way. And I started over the last 2 years really asking myself, like, what do I want to do for me? because if I take care of me, I'll take care of everyone else. Like everyone will benefit from that. So, Michael, I'm on a huge, ridiculous, expensive travel kick right now. So I
Okay.
turned 30 in March. My mom turns 60 in a couple weeks here in September. And we did a 30-60 trip to Italy. So we spent 2 weeks in
Oh my
Italy,
gosh.
just like running around. The 2 months after that, I was in London for work. So I did like 2 months of England. And now I am currently planning a trip to Banff National Park in Canada. And then in next February, we go to Prague. So that's honestly what I love to do. I spent a lot
Yeah.
of my life not traveling. So this is
Yeah.
like, there's so much world to see. There's so much good to see that I'm on a super crazy travel kick. And I see myself after those crazy excursions, like coming back super refreshed. So that's the biggest
Mhm.
thing. But honestly, like you can't do a huge travel trip every single month. So
Right. Right.
I have 2 rescue dogs that I hike every single morning. They are my sanity. They hear about my work problems more than any. But it's just like, I don't know, finding ways that you can truly disconnect because,
Yeah.
work has become so infused into all of our lives every single day. But then you go to places like Italy where it's very defined. Like you work and then at night you
Yeah.
don't even think about it. So how can we have a little bit more balance in life? Because like in my world, we're not saving lives. What we do is very important, but we're not saving lives here. So how can we have I challenge myself to think, how can I have a little bit more balance and do fun things? But Milwaukee in
How,
summer, if you haven't been, Michael, is a great time.
we have talked about this briefly. It is on my list of remaining great American cities to get to. I want a ball game. I want,
Uh-huh.
beer. I want cheese. I want the whole thing. So it will be on the list. I'm actually checking off ATPC. My client is going to Minneapolis in September
And
for a
those,
board meeting, and that's another great city
yeah.
out there that I haven't been to. So what do you bring back? How do you bring that insight back from Italy and infuse that into your work, that sort of balance?
The best part was whenever I travel, and the Banff one, I'm going alone. So, like, I like things that make me step outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah,
In Italy, like, my mother and I don't speak Italian, so and that's, their native language, so it's how you can navigate a location you've never been to, but my favorite part of any trip I've ever been on is talking with, like, local people who live within the region
yeah,
and hearing the perspective. Like, what we talked about before, Michael, about, we're all humans at the end of the day. There's so many crazy, cool stories and
yeah,
life learnings that people have had. So I think that perspective is something I usually take back to it. But honestly, it's a way to connect with people. Like, oh, I went to
yeah,
Italy and maybe my colleague who I've never had a good connection with also went to Italy. And now we have this relationship. So it's just, I hate to keep using the word humanizing, but it's just
yeah,
making people people. And that's been the
yeah.
coolest thing about, bringing things home from some of my trips.
Yeah, I think travel breaks down it opens your eyes and your worldview, and it breaks down barriers. I love that you're thinking more about it. It's that human connection. Have you traveled on a big trip alone before?
Never in my life. And I've had people be like,
I'm
"Oh my god, Banff, that's like my bucket list. Can I come with?" And I'm like, "I love you, but no, like I truly want this to be 4 or 5 days of me just navigating, meeting people." I mean, even having dinner, I travel a lot for work and you're alone a lot, but having dinner by yourself is a little bit out
Yeah,
of your comfort zone. Like, what do you do? Do you talk to
yeah,
anyone? So I think this is like my first ever
yeah.
solo trip, and I'm so freaking excited.
I'm excited for you. It'll be so great. I know your adventurousness and your confidence. You'll be great. I've done a bit of solo travel, and I went to Germany alone,
Oh,
and I just
where?
remember coming, and I don't speak German, and coming out of the Berlin train station. I was in Dusseldorf first, and it was very civilized and
Sure.
smaller and quaint, and there was English. There's a funny story about getting lost and then being hungry and not being able to understand things at a grocery store. Funny story for another day. But I get out of the Berlin train station and everything is enormous and nobody would speak English to me. And
Sure.
I was like, okay, this is where it's real now. Like this is
Mm.
I've got to figure it out. And so it's yeah, in Canada, people are so lovely. So they'll take care of you. But it's great. I'm excited for you. It'll be a good trip.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. But yeah, I think stepping outside your comfort zone is so important.
Yeah.
You get in the motions very easily, and sometimes you just got to do something wildly different. My mom and I last year did the summer of yes, where we just said yes to any new experience. And God, we're doing it again this year. Now it's just like a way of life. Like, just say yes. If you hate it, you can
Love
go
it.
home, but just try something. What's the worst that can happen?
I love it. I was going to ask another question, but I sort of feel like that's the place to end it. Just say yes. And you're saying yes to your career. You're saying yes to mentoring others. And you said yes to this podcast, and it means the world to me. I think the world of you. You're doing great things, and I'm excited to see your journey. And thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. This was fun. Anytime.
Well, good, and we'll talk about that Pat McAfee like show and
Wow.
compare notes and get a podcast going.
This was like our pilot of it. So I think we did a good job. Like we can do some good banter.
I love it. All right, well, we'll talk offline.
I don't know hockey, so I'll have to learn hockey before
Well,
we can do that.
good. And I've given up on golf, so you
For
can
sure.
give me the insights from the links. Well, Erin, thanks for being on. This is the Walk On podcast, people leading with passion and purpose, providing a roadmap for your personal journey. Hear their stories, find your passion, walk on. Erin, thanks for being on.
Thanks, Michael.
Next up on the Walk On podcast.
And this took me a while to learn as a very young entrepreneur. I was not the best boss, but the team comes first. If you have good people and a good team, you can kind of do anything because clients are going to come and go. And you can't control that, but you can control how your team is working together. If they're happy, if they're feeling balanced, that is in control.
Notice me looking at you. Well, I've been staring for hours, thinking about exactly what to do to you. I can't believe you didn't notice the 1,000 times I walked by you. I must have looked like a neon sign saying, look at me, won't you look at me.